Thunder Bay City Council has officially designated Cam River Heritage Park as the location for the planned temporary shelter village. Good evening and thank you for joining us. The decision was ratified during last night's council meeting, but not before a closed-door meeting about the email from CPKC Rail opposing the plans and more discussion about safety concerns at that site. Jessica Clement has the details.
After months of stops and starts, some progress has been made in Thunder Bay's efforts to address homelessness.
This puts us on the right track to find a place that people can have dignity and respect, while also, when somebody calls and says there's an unauthorized encampment somewhere, we have tools to do something.
Monday night's meeting saw another debate on the Cam River site, this time centering on an email councillors received from Canadian Pacific Kansas City Railway outlining the company's safety concerns.
And with their guidelines, they say that nothing's allowed to be within 300 meters of their rail yard.
They voiced their concerns to us and provided some details. For example, they are very concerned about members of the public crossing their rail lines, which exists today.
City Manager John Collins says the 300-meter guideline is not legislation, and there can be exceptions. He adds that administration will do a full safety assessment of the site and will consult CPKC on their concerns.
If, for whatever reason, the safety assessment identifies safety concerns that cannot be mitigated and put the corporation at undue risk, then we will, of course, return to council to identify those undue risks.
At-large councillor Mark Bentz asked if the safety concerns would affect the next stage of the project.
Could their strong statements that this poses significant risk to public safety in any way impact our ability to find an operator for this site?
I do not believe that the letter received and the concerns raised by CPKC would limit providers providing this type of service.
Mayor Kim Boschkoff noted that it wasn't an easy decision for any council member, but reiterated that something needed to be done to help those living in encampments. He adds that he's confident the city will be able to receive more help from both levels of government when the temporary shelter village is built.
I have every belief that once we make a decision, that we will be able to engage the other orders of government to assume their responsibility and to come to the table with more fulsome amounts of money.
The site was ratified with an 8-5 vote. The next steps include a safety assessment and issuing the tenders. Administration estimates the facility will be up and running in the fall. Jessica Clement, TBT News.
Also during last night's meeting, city staff provided council with an update on the current state of the city pound and other animal services. Corporate Services Commissioner Carrie Greaves says changes were made after they identified numerous gaps in the system.
These early actions include providing direction to officers to attend to animals that are loose off their owner's property rather than only those found running at large, enhancing our online presence to improve communication and accessibility to the public, reviewing and modernizing our standards of care, and re-engaging with key community partners.
The changes have been in place for the last couple of weeks, and Greaves says they'll continue to work closely with community groups to ensure the services align with the needs of both pets and residents. An animal task force is in the works, and the city will soon put out a call for those interested in joining. Greaves also addressed what he calls misinformation that's been circulating around social media, which stemmed from a petition that claimed the city pound on Alloy Place was closed due to the restructuring of municipal enforcement services a few years ago.
The pound itself has never been closed. However, public access has been restricted. We do care for animals that are collected. In fact, we currently have 10 dogs in care. If anyone has lost their pet recently, I encourage you to check out our website. Animals in our care are vaccinated, receive vet care when needed, and are properly fed and cared for.
A $5 billion class action lawsuit over the housing crisis in remote First Nations is now awaiting a decision. Sandy Lake is one of the lead plaintiffs in the class action, which includes over 100 First Nations across Canada. The court hearing wrapped up last Thursday. Justin Hardy reports.
They understand and they appreciate it really shouldn't be normal. They shouldn't be living like second-class citizens. They shouldn't be living as though they're in a third world country when they're here in Canada.
First Nations, such as Sandy Lake in northwestern Ontario, allege that Canada has failed in its duties over the on-reserve housing crisis across remote and northern First Nations in Canada. Stephanie Wilsey, a lawyer with McCarthy Tatro, the legal representatives for the First Nations, says the lack of housing in northern and remote communities has severely lowered the quality of life on reserve.
Their claim has to do with both the underfunding and policies impacting housing on reserves, which has resulted in severe overcrowding and housing conditions that require significant major repairs.
The lawyers in the case argued that it is Ottawa's responsibility to provide adequate housing on reserves. They allege that Canada deliberately underfunded housing on reserves. In response, the federal government released a statement of defense in 2024 that said First Nations are responsible for planning, procuring, and managing their own housing stock. Canada supports their housing projects through funding. Canada does not owe any legal obligation or duties to build and maintain houses on reserve. The class action is asking for $5 billion in damages and in order that the federal government provide adequate housing on reserve.
They're looking to hold the government accountable to their obligations to properly fund and ensure that there's reasonable access to housing on reserves, which Canada created.
The hearing on the lawsuit wrapped up on Thursday in Winnipeg. A decision from the federal court is expected to take several months. Justin Hardy, TBT News.
Ontario's premier gave praise to the Prime Minister after his meeting with the U.S. President today. Although he saw the meeting as a positive sign, CTV's Siobhan Morris reports that Doug Ford is pushing ahead with his plan to protect Ontario jobs.
There are some places that are never for sale.
The Prime Minister's Oval Office moment standing up for Canada gets kudos from the Premier of the country's biggest province.
I thought he did really well. It was very productive. He held his own.
Not discouraged by the President's repeating an assertion that the U.S. doesn't need Canadian goods.
I think it's a little bit of rhetoric that he's saying, but I think we're in a much better position now than we were before this meeting.
Still, there's no sign tariffs will be wiped away anytime soon. So Doug Ford's making good on a campaign promise to add $1 billion to a fund helping those in the skilled trades.
The workers being trained through this funding will get the skills and experience they need to build and protect Ontario, all while enjoying the dignity of a hard-earned paycheck.
The opposition leader thinks that's a good idea, but worries about where the Premier's focus on building is landing.
We saw the letter from the Premier calling this fantasy tunnel one of his priorities.
A tunnel for cars and transit under Highway 401 is a project the Premier has said could be flagged as a special economic zone, a tool the government's giving itself in Bill 5 to skip or streamline some planning steps for things like developing mines, major infrastructure.
They're going to help incentivize job creation to the province, and at a time when the President is trying to move jobs away from Canada, I would hope all political parties would stand with us.
But there are concerns about fast passes for groups the government deems to be trusted.
It's the Wild West. It creates opportunities for everyone to dispense with EAs and dispense with permitting. So it's a real concern. Where will the accountability be without those guardrails?
Warning the legislation sets the stage for another Greenbelt-style scandal.
We don't need to have special economic zones that sound a lot more like communist China than democratic Ontario.
Bill 5 is still making its way through the legislature, but the government's aim is to identify the first of these special economic zones by September. At Queen's Park, Siobhan Morris, CTV News.
A portion of the highway west of Atikokan had to be shut down to all traffic last night due to a forest fire burning along the highway corridor. OPP posted this photo on social media at around 8 p.m., advising the public that Highway 11 in the Larome Lake area was shut down because of the forest fire. It fully reopened about 3 hours later after the MNR decided the 1.5 hectare fire was safely contained. That was one of 3 new fires reported on Sunday and Monday across the Northwest. The fire hazard is currently rated as high in most of the region. Maritime runner Trevor Redmond made a stop in Thunder Bay this week on his Cross Canada run, promoting health, fitness, and recovery for all Canadians. The 53-year-old's latest journey began in Nova Scotia in March of last year. Aptly named the Fellow in Yellow, Redmond has run a total of 6,773 kilometers so far and has around 3,000 more to go before he reaches Vancouver Island. Prior to his journey, Redmond walked across Canada throughout 2006 and 2007 and did a bike ride across the country in 2009. The funds he raised along the way are going to the Dollar a Day Foundation for those struggling with mental health and addictions to get professional help they need.
A run for courage. And I'm really out to promote people to become courageous about their health. You can find out how much I raised since October 2023 in preparation for the trip, just going to the Own the Kilometer page. Because for every $10 that I've received, it's marked there, and it's up over 4,800 numbers of support, so that would be up to about $48,000.
Anyone wanting to donate to the Fellow in Yellow's cause can go to his website, thereandbackcanada.ca. The weather has finally turned a corner here in Thunder Bay. The mercury surpassed the 20-degree mark this afternoon, and a few local golf courses are now open for the season. Some city residents were out swinging their clubs and taking advantage of the great weather. Ryan Graham has more.
Dragon Hills Golf Course and Driving Range is now officially open for the season. They welcome anyone and everyone to stop by. With a clear sky, light wind, and a high of 22 degrees Celsius, many golfers are now making their way onto local greens and fairways. To date, approximately half of the local golf courses have now opened, and here at Dragon Hills, golfers of all levels of experience and ages were having fun in the sun.
It was a late start, but we did open on the Sunday. Sunday about noon, and since then we've probably put through maybe 50 to 60 rounds. Of course, Mother Nature definitely makes it difficult some years, and some years it makes it easy. But this year was a little bit longer than normal. We did open the range about 2 weeks ago, and that's been busy because everyone wants to swing the clubs. But yeah, we're happy to say that everyone's on the actual golf course at this point, and things are drying up and greening up as we speak.
Dragon Hills is a public golf course with many members that also welcomes drop-ins for the day or the week. A friendly and easygoing place to golf, it often attracts people looking for a fun-loving kind of time.
I bought my pass last year in November, and it was just like, I had such a great time here last year. I think I missed 10 days and the whole summer just about, and sometimes 2-3 games a day, but it's just a beautiful little course to keep simplicity, and you just enjoy your day like we are today, and it's like you couldn't ask for a nicer day.
Ryan Graham, TBT News.
I know a lot of people have been looking forward to getting out onto the golf course, Joel Mendelson including. And, Fiona, I think a lot of people are happy to see what you have to tell us today.
Oh, it was gorgeous out there. I saw a lot of T-shirts this afternoon. I saw a lot of shorts. That's because although we started the day on the freezing mark, we warmed up to 22, yes, 22 Celsius, which is by no means a record, but it was beautiful. Loads of sunshine. Wind started out from the southwest about 9 kilometers per hour, and then this afternoon has kicked up just a little bit in the afternoon, rotating around. It's now coming in from the northeast, or at times the east-northeast, at about 25 kilometers an hour. If we take a look at what's going on across the region, clouds are starting to roll into Fort Frances, so it's looking pretty gray. They're currently at a very seasonal 17, 16 for Kenora, Dryden, Uppsala. Then it starts to cool down as you pass into Armstrong and Greenstone on the lower end of the double digits. But Greenstone had plenty of sunshine today. They actually topped out at 21 in the afternoon, then dropped down and then popped back up a couple of hours ago. So it's been up and down for much of the day. Winds have also been increasing and gusting up to about 45 kilometers per hour throughout the region. Eastern Shores, Wawa at 16, 17 in Sault Ste. Marie under mostly cloudy skies, and those are the highs for the day. Here in the city of Thunder Bay, we are going to stay above the freezing mark tonight with a low of 3 and, oh, that shouldn't be clear skies. That should be partly cloudy and a 30% chance of showers. 30%, very minimal, looking actually pretty good. But what I'm going to say, I think folks know at this time of year with spring being a transition season, temperatures fluctuate a lot, and this week is definitely not going to be the exception to the rule. They're going to see a lot of highs and a lot of lows. I'll have more on that, though, later on in the news hour.